You failed. You lost. You feel like you've hit rock bottom. Good, because now you get to rebuild. Failure. We've all been there. Whether it's a business that collapsed, a relationship that ended, a career setback, or a personal goal that crashed and burned. That moment when everything you worked for falls apart can feel like the end of your story. But what if I told you it's actually the beginning? In the next few minutes, I'm going to show you exactly how to use failure as a launchpad, not a finish line. You'll learn the exact process successful people use to transform their biggest setbacks into the foundation for something even better. And if you're sitting there right now feeling lost, stuck, or like you've wasted years of your life, stick around, because by the end of this video, you'll have a clear roadmap for turning your failure into the best thing that ever happened to you. Chapter 1. The Psychology of Failure. Let's start with what's happening in your brain right now. When you fail at something significant, your brain doesn't just register it as an event, it feels like an identity death. The person you thought you were, the capable one, the smart one, the one who had it together, suddenly seems like a lie. This happens because we mix up two completely different things. Failing at something versus being a failure. One is an event, the other is an identity, and your brain wants to connect them. This triggers what psychologists call the shame spiral. First comes the intense shame, that feeling that you're fundamentally flawed. Then comes avoidance. You start dodging situations, people, or thoughts that remind you of the failure. Finally, there's stagnation, where you stop taking risks and settle into a smaller version of your life. Sound familiar? Here's the good news. This spiral isn't inevitable. In fact, the moment you understand that failure is just data, not a death sentence, everything changes. Quick recap. Failure feels like your identity is dying because your brain confuses events with who you are. This triggers shame, avoidance, and eventually stagnation. But there's a better way to respond. Coming up next, I'll break down the exact four-phase process for reinventing yourself after failure. The same process used by everyone from Steve Jobs after being fired from Apple to J.K. Rowling after hitting rock bottom. Chapter 2. The four phases of reinvention. The path from failure to reinvention isn't random. It follows a specific pattern that you can learn and apply starting today. I call it the four-phase reinvention process. Phase 1. Acceptance. Stop fighting reality. The first phase is the hardest but most crucial, acceptance. You can't rebuild while you're still denying the collapse. When Thomas Edison's lab burned down in 1914, destroying years of work and research, his first response wasn't denial. According to witnesses, he simply said, "There goes a lot of work, but it's all right. We'll start again tomorrow." That's acceptance. This doesn't mean you have to like what happened. It simply means you stop wasting energy fighting reality. Here's how to practice acceptance. Stop saying, "This can't be happening," or "This isn't fair." Replace those thoughts with, "This happened. Now what?" Give yourself permission to feel the pain, but don't let it define you. Write it down. I failed at Nashai scared, and that's okay. Phase 2. Reflection. Extract the lessons. Once you've accepted what happened, it's time to extract the gold from the rubble. Failure without reflection is just repetition. You need to understand what went wrong and why, if you want different results next time. Research from Harvard Business School shows that people who reflect on their failures systematically are 25% more likely to succeed in their next venture compared to those who don't. Ask yourself, what specifically broke down? Be brutally specific. What assumptions did I make that turned out to be wrong? What role did I play in this outcome? What warning signs did I ignore? What would I do differently if I could start over? Write down your answers. This isn't about beating yourself up. It's about extracting wisdom that will fuel your next chapter. Phase 3. Reset. Detach from the old identity. The third phase is where most people get stuck. They can't let go of who they thought they were supposed to be. Maybe you always saw yourself as the entrepreneur or the partner in a perfect relationship, or the person who never fails. That identity has been shattered, and you need to let it go before you can build something new. This is what psychologists call identity detachment. It's about creating space between who you were and who you're becoming. Try these reset techniques. Create physical distance if possible. Change your environment. Try something completely new that has nothing to do with your past identity. Avoid the "I've always been this way" trap. Give yourself permission to experiment with new ways of being. When Sarah Blakely's dream of becoming a lawyer collapsed after failing the LSAT twice, she had to detach from that identity before she could become the founder of Spanx and the world's youngest self-made female billionaire. Phase 4. Rebuild. Small moves, big shifts. The final phase is where the magic happens. Reinvention isn't about dramatic overnight changes. It's about small, consistent moves in a new direction. Neuroscience shows that tiny changes, when repeated, literally rewire your brain. Each small action creates new neural pathways that eventually become your new normal. The rebuild phase includes setting new goals aligned with what you've learned, creating tiny daily habits that move you toward those goals, finding a new community that supports your emerging identity, celebrating small wins to build momentum. Remember, you're not trying to recreate the past. You're creating something new. Quick recap. The 4-phase reinvention process includes acceptance, reflection, reset, and rebuild. Coming up next, why most reinvention attempts fail and how to avoid the common traps that keep people stuck in the past. Chapter 3. The hidden traps. During reinvention. Even with a solid process, there are psychological traps that can derail your reinvention. Let me show you how to spot and avoid them. Trap number 1. Trying to bounce back too fast. When boxer Mike Tyson lost his heavyweight title to Buster Douglas in one of the biggest upsets in sports history, he rushed into another fight too quickly. The result? Another loss that deepened his downward spiral. The pressure to bounce back quickly comes from our discomfort with uncertainty. But true reinvention requires time in what psychologists call the neutral zone, that uncomfortable space between your old identity and your new one. Don't rush this process. Give yourself permission to be a work in progress. Trap number 2. Chasing external validation. After significant failure, it's tempting to rebuild your life around proving others wrong. "I'll show them" becomes your driving force. The problem? You're still letting others define your worth. Research from the University of Michigan shows that people driven primarily by external validation during reinvention are 3 times more likely to abandon their new path when facing obstacles. Build your new life around what matters to you, not what will impress others. Trap number 3. Romanticizing your past self. If only I could get back to where I was. This thought is reinvention poison. When Apple fired Steve Jobs in 1985, he could have spent years trying to recreate his past success. Instead, he built something entirely new with Pixar and Next, which ultimately made him more successful than he ever would have been otherwise. Remember, you're not going backward. You're going forward into something better. Trap number 4. The perfection paralysis. After failure, many people become terrified of making another mistake. They overplan, overanalyze, and ultimately underact. Perfection is the enemy of reinvention. The path forward is messy by definition. Start before you feel ready. Take imperfect action. Learn as you go. Quick recap. The major traps that derail reinvention are bouncing back too quickly, chasing external validation, romanticizing your past self, and perfection paralysis. Coming up next, the transformation moment that turns failure into your greatest advantage. Chapter 4. The transformation moment. There comes a point in every successful reinvention story where something fundamental shifts. It's the moment when failure transforms from your greatest shame into your greatest advantage. J.K. Rowling describes hitting rock bottom as stripping away everything non-essential. Rock bottom became the solid foundation on which I rebuilt my life, she said. This is the paradox of reinvention. The version of you that failed isn't the version that needs to rise. You're not going back. You're going forward into something better. What makes this transformation possible? It's the moment you realize that failure didn't just take things from you. It gave you something invaluable: clarity about what really matters, freedom from the expectations that were limiting you, resilience that can only be forged through difficulty, wisdom that success could never teach you. This isn't just positive thinking. Research from the University of Pennsylvania shows that people who experience and process significant failure develop greater emotional agility, more authentic relationships, and often achieve more meaningful success afterward. When Oprah Winfrey was fired from her job as a news anchor and told she was unfit for television, that failure redirected her toward the talk show format, where she would ultimately thrive. Her firing wasn't just an event, it was the redirection she needed. Your failure is trying to tell you something. Are you listening? Chapter 5: Practical Steps to Start Your Reinvention. Today, let's bring this from theory to practice. Here are specific actions you can take today to begin your reinvention process. The identity audit. Make 2 columns on a piece of paper. In the first, write down all the identities and beliefs about yourself that were shattered by your failure. In the second, write down what's still true about you despite what happened. The failure CV. Create a resume of your failures and what each one taught you. This exercise, popularized by Princeton professor Johannes Haushofer, helps you see how failure has actually equipped you. The 30-day reset. Choose one small daily habit that represents your new direction. Commit to it for just 30 days. This creates momentum without overwhelming you. The reinvention board. Gather 2 to 3 people who believe in who you're becoming, not just who you were. Meet with them monthly to share your progress and get feedback. The future self. Letter. Write a letter from your future self 1 year from now, describing how this failure ultimately led to something better. Be specific about what that something better looks like. These aren't just feel-good exercises. They're practical tools that trigger the neurological and psychological shifts necessary for true reinvention. Conclusion. Failure breaks illusions, not your future. The collapse of what was never meant to be creates space for what's truly possible for you. And the version of yourself that emerges from this process will be stronger, wiser, and more authentic than the one that came before. Reinvention isn't a second chance to be who you were. It's your first chance to become who you're truly capable of being. The Japanese art of kintsugi repairs broken pottery by filling the cracks with gold, creating something more beautiful and valuable than the original. Your reinvention works the same way. The places where you've been broken become the highlights of your story. If you have the courage to fill them with gold, don't waste your failure. Use it to rebuild, stronger and wiser than before. Your comeback story doesn't just start today. It started the moment everything fell apart. You just didn't know it yet. Your comeback story starts today. Watch the next video to learn how to rebuild self-confidence step by step. If you liked the video, don't forget to subscribe to our channel.